Great. It's great to be here. Thanks, Kay. Thanks, AppFollow, for having me. I'm Apoorva. I head product at this company called SignEasy, and I'll talk about the company some more. Today, I'm going to be talking about how supporting new iOS features can help your iOS app get more visibility on the App Store. So we have some history supporting our iOS app and get sort of helping or getting Apple's help on supporting our iOS app on the App Store. So I'll talk a little about the history as well. So a quick outline of what I'll be talking about. Again, I'll give you a quick introduction of SignEasy, just to set the context of what the product is and what space we are in. Give you a little bit of context on our history with Apple, because that will probably make it more clear as to why we invest so much in iOS and supporting the new features that iOS introduces. I'll go over a quick case study of the latest iOS launch, which was iOS 13, and the kind of traction we got for the release, as well as give you a few tips on how you could support the new iOS versions, what goes behind the scenes to be ready for that September release. Happy to take any questions after that or even during the presentation. So just a quick introduction of SignEasy. We are a cloud-based electronic signature solution. We are a SaaS-based solution. We have products on iOS, Android, as well as the web app. Till date, we have about 130,000 customers serving across 40,000 businesses. So we are a business-focused product. On the App Store, we are in the business category. So I'll give you a quick introduction of the kind of traction that we've gotten on the platform as well. So like I said, 130,000 customers across. We have about 48 million documents managed on our platform so far, about 20 million documents signed. So quite a bit of traction on the platforms. Just in terms of iOS, we have over 5 million downloads. And the reason I call this out is it's important to note that almost all of our downloads are organic in nature. We don't really pay for our installs. We never have. And the relationship that we have with Apple and a lot of what I'm going to talk about today has contributed to this growth as well. So it's worth noting that. In terms of the countries we support, of course, all 155 that App Store is present in. And we also localized in 24 languages, something else that has helped us in our growth in the App Store. Probably a topic for a different conversation, but localization is something that helps. Great question. NPS and Net Promoter Score is a way to know how happy your customers are with your product. 65 to 70 is usually like Amazon and Apple have an NPS of about 70. So we have an NPS of about 65 on the iOS app. And again, just a few numbers in terms of the traction we have on our ratings, as well as the reviews that we have garnered so far on the platform. Cool. So just to talk a little about our history with Apple, and the reason I bring this up is because our relationship with Apple that we have invested in over the last many years has brought us to a point where we are sort of reaping benefits from it as well. And one of the benefits is of when you invest and support the new version of iOS by building on that, and sort of in return iOS features you in September, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So over the many years, I'm not going to go into details, but right from 2010 is when the first iOS version was released on the App Store all the way up till today. Every year we have focused a lot on iOS as a platform. We have in return received a lot of love from Apple as well. And there are a lot of benefits that there are being on the radar, right? And especially if you're a business that's very heavily dependent on your iOS app. If you're a mobile app business, or in our case, we are across platforms, but since iOS was our first product that we launched, we have a lot of customers that are on iOS. So yeah, I'll probably not go into details over here, but what I would like to highlight some of the things that have happened and something that we're quite proud of, which are probably a little rare, is 2015, we were featured in the Apple Touch ID commercial. There was an iPad commercial as well. And the reason I bring this up is, again, a lot of this happens only with relationship building. Nobody really knows, right? And Apple doesn't publish how this happens. Thank you. Cheers to you too. But a lot of this has to do with supporting the new features, and these are some of the benefits, additional benefits, apart from what you get on the App Store, that you can get by supporting the new features and building that relationship with Apple. So the past 5 years or so, we've been featured on Apple's retail stores as well. So today, if you walk into an Apple store, the demo devices that you see on display there, chances are that you will see SignEasy installed there as well. Something else that Apple doesn't really talk about, or there's no program online that you can find it, but something else that just happens by investing in that relationship with Apple over time. I think the first time we got featured on the demo devices was in 2015, and since then it's been every year that they've reached out to us for a demo version of the app to put it up. And again, of course, the App Store, the prime real estate for any app developer, and a lot of it. And we'll go into this in a little more detail, but this happens through the year. Once you invest in it, of course, Apple keeps picking your app up for a variety of collectives all through the year without even notifying you a lot of times. So that we have seen that kind of traction across the many months as well. And very recently, Apple called us one of the 70 or so mobility partners that they have across the globe. This was a very close partnership, months in the making, but this was also one of the things that came out of investing into the platform. So again, the takeaway from all of this is that there are a lot of things that happens outside of the App Store that Apple works with developers on very closely. A lot of different programs, they have different marketing teams for a lot of different initiatives of theirs. So it's definitely worth investing in building that relationship if Apple is something, or if the iOS platform is something that you focus on. Now, just going back to how we invest, or how we have invested in the platform. Over the past 5 years, we have supported the different versions of iOS that have come out, starting from iOS 9 all the way up to iOS 13. And you can see every new feature that iOS has released in that version, we have supported it. And again, we'll go into detail as to what it takes to support such a feature. I'm just going to take this questionnaire, I think, because this is about this slide. Outside of supporting the latest iOS versions. Right, so I think latest iOS version is probably the first starting point that you would have to build that relationship, because the point of contact that you build your relationship with is your developer relations person. And that would be your starting point. And that is a person who can sort of introduce you to a lot of programs that they know are happening, because the way Apple typically runs is all these programs, and whoever is heading these programs, they reach out to developer relations team, who in turn, they kind of know who their developers are, who they're in touch with, and they sort of suggest these names. So that would be the person that you work with. The reason it is the latest iOS versions is because there's not a lot that you can do as a developer for them other than supporting the latest iOS. And also investing. It doesn't even just have to be the latest iOS. It could also be if you're building something super innovative. If it's, for instance, ML Kit, which is probably not new, but if you're doing something in ML, something that Apple is invested in, supporting that also works. But the key takeaway is that investing and building a relationship with their developer relations. The first moment we knew, like I said, back in 2010 is when the app launched, and by a lot of good luck, we got featured almost immediately. Back then in 2010, there weren't a lot of apps competing for the hotspot. And since then, we were iOS only for a very long time. So it was kind of easy for us to make that decision that we want to invest in this platform. And that sort of started showing its reward very early. So that's what sort of proved to us that we should keep doing this. Cool, now I'll just jump into the latest version that we supported, the iOS 13 release that happened last September. So in terms of the impact, it was a worldwide feature for us. The day iOS 13 went live, SignEasy was featured across the globe in about 151 countries, across iPad as well as iPhone, across a lot of different categories, including the Today tab, as you see here, the Power Dock mode, as well as the apps section of the App Store as well. So got a lot of media coverage also. There were about 9 big name pickups, and this is I just brought this out just to show you, of course, outside of the Apple universe, also people are talking about iOS, the latest iOS. So it always helps to sort of support these features, because this was sort of kind of like a bonus that we got 9 big name pickups because we were supporting, because we had a big iOS 13 release ready for release on the first day. And just in terms of a few quick numbers, as you can see, I'm not sure if you can see the graph real well, but that's a spike in the product page views of our App Store. So you can see in September, we made 2 releases. One is the iOS release, and the other one was the iPadOS release. And they sort of coincided with the feature as well that Apple did. And the reason I bring this up is it's very, very important to be day 0 ready. And we'll talk about why a little later as well. But you don't want to be day 1 ready, day 2 ready. It has to be before. You need to be ready before the release, before Apple pushes out the release, right? And that's how your release sort of needs to coincide with when they feature you. And as soon as they feature you, this is the kind of traction that we got on the release. And another thing to note is you can see that, of course, it spiked. In September, there were a few releases, a few features all through September. So it was relatively high. But even today, which is well into February, almost March, it's still higher than what we saw before September. So we are still seeing that impact to this day. So it definitely helps. And the impact sort of stays through the subsequent months. Those are product page views, but these are the app installs that we actually got. And there was about a 2.5x increase in weekly installs, similar impact on signups and purchases as well. Cool. So that was a little about our latest release. I am not going to pretend, though, to say that there is a playbook that you can follow, or there's a set template that, these are the steps and you get featured by Apple. Obviously, like I said, it's a lot of relationship building, and it's a lot about how much you want to commit to it, whatever makes sense for your business as well. But I would like to share a few tips, if not steps, that you can follow. So getting your app ready before the iOS release, what it takes. And these are some of the things that we did and that worked for us. Might work for you as well, but definitely worth trying. Over the years, we have seen that this is something that repeatedly has started working for us. So this is something that we tend to do for every release. And it's sort of course, it's easier said than done, but sort of works for us. So the first one is start planning in June to be ready by 1st of September. So this is very important because, excuse me, the 2 markers that you have in mind, excuse me, one would be the WWDC, right? So the Apple Developer Conference that Apple has every year. That is when iOS goes live. That's when that's when iOS is announced. The new features are announced. The beta versions are released, and that happens in June, and it always happens in the first week of June. That should be the point you start planning all the way up till your September release. It's a pretty big window, I know, but this development cycle that you have, trust me, would be like any other that you do. And the reason that happens is because iOS itself is unstable at this point, and you will run into a lot of issues while developing as well. So it's best to start early. So if you are really committed into it, it's at least a couple of months, 2.5 months of effort. And you can target to be ready by 1st of September, because the release date is anytime in September. Could be the first week all the way up till, I think, iOS 13 was somewhere near the 20th. So 1st September is a good date to target. The other thing I highly recommend, and if this is something that you can do, and if you have the resources or the willingness to attend WWDC, do it. It's not like any other conference where it's just a bunch of talks that you can just watch online. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes as well. There are a lot of developer meetups that happen. Apple's developer relations team is very much present. Every region's team is present all through WW. They schedule a lot of events and meetups during WW as well, where you can just build relationships literally right then. And the agenda for them is to meet new developers that they aren't really aware of in their region. And definitely one of the advantages that I've seen is that, like I said, Xcode itself So a new version of iOS as well as a new version of Xcode is announced at WWDC, and both of these are released in beta right after the keynote. All through the sessions at WWDC, people are, you have engineers, Apple engineers, helping you get set up. A lot of times what happens is your code doesn't run the first time. You've installed new Xcode, some dependency is broken or something else is broken, it's not running. They are there to help you set up and get started. So it definitely gives you a head start. And they have labs, and you can get all sorts of questions resolved. They even go to the extent of going through your code and help answer questions and actually help you with the code. And they have separate design labs as well for any kind of design level feedback that you need. Takeaway being that WWDC is definitely a lot happens behind the scenes other than the talks. So if you are able to attend this will definitely give you a head start in your quest to support the latest iOS. I can't say this enough. You need to be launch day ready, otherwise this does not work. It's not day one, but it has to be day 0 of the iOS release. So the day iOS goes out, your app needs to be ready and approved in the App Store so that you can push the button and be ready. And the reason that happens is as soon as iOS goes live, the App Store is completely refreshed to show the apps that are ready, right? So Apple definitely is banking on you to make sure that you are ready with the latest release. Yeah, so the time window, going back to what I had said, June to September, this will not be like any other development cycle. It'll be a lot slower, a lot more frustrating. iOS itself is in beta. A lot of times, you run into issues that are platform issues that are not issues that you can control, and they're not issues that you can necessarily fix in time for September as well. So you would want to give it enough time. And you're constantly waiting for the next iOS beta version to come out. So it's a lot of back and forth. So I would definitely recommend giving yourself as much time as you can. The best way to do all of this is work with your developer relations person all through the month. And this is not just around September when you're ready to release. That's not the time you reach out to them. It has to be right from June. And the way you do that is just letting them know what your roadmap is, keep giving them frequent updates with images and videos or whatever you're building. I hope all of you have a developer relations person that has been assigned to you. If not, you should definitely reach out on LinkedIn. LinkedIn for me has worked well in the past, where so how Apple works is for every region there is a developer relations. Cold approach works well because what Apple does is for every region, for every app category, for instance, if you're in productivity or if you're in the education space, your app, there would be a specific person assigned for your geography, for your app category. And that person's job is essentially to find new developers and work with developers to do this. So definitely LinkedIn, do a cold outreach, that definitely helps. So all through and if you have a developer relations person in place, as soon as Apple announces it, get your roadmap ready and let them know what you're going to be building. I do know that Apple all through from June to September maintains a list of apps, or every developer relations person maintains a list of apps that will be supporting the new iOS. And that is because, again, editorial relies on developer relations to figure out who are the people that they're going to be featuring come September. So it's important for the developer relations person to be completely aware that you are working on it and you're on track. And you have images and videos to share because it helps them to convince editorial that you should be featured. I hope that made sense. If any questions, please drop them. And the other interesting thing is, you might not realize this, but iOS itself is in beta at this point. So Apple is really looking for feedback on iOS as well as Xcode before they go live in September. And this is a great point for you to continuously give feedback to the developer relations person as well. And trust me, this really works, is because they are constantly speaking to developers, especially new frameworks that they release. And if you find a bug there, or if you have any feedback on any of the APIs or anything of that sort, it really helps. And it also helps in the long term because it lets the DevRel or Apple, for that matter, know that this person is somebody, or this developer is somebody who's committed to the framework and to the platform. And they will definitely reach out to you in the future if they need any feedback or any help, really, For instance, in our case, it has happened that we have given feedback, and in the future we have been called for a lot of like localization, internationalization studies directly with Apple's Cupertino team. So that definitely helps. So this entire process, this entire period of June to September is a lot about back and forth feedback and just constantly talking to that person and making sure that they are up to date with everything that you're doing. So that was a lot about just gearing up and going towards the September launch. I think now, come September, what do you do when you are close to launch, and what do you do for marketing? So I have just some tips here. Actually, before I jump in, maybe I'll just take this question. No, so what I meant there was not updating the App Store listing with new videos and images. I'll come to that in the marketing launch, but also when you are speaking to your or the way it would happen is when you're speaking to your dev relation person, you're constantly emailing them. So email them screenshots of the progress that you're making, email them videos, just prototypes. They don't need like a build to try out. You can always share a test flight build if needed, but just sharing a video of your prototype really helps. It could even just be a design of what you're thinking or making initially. All of that just helps you be on the radar, and it helps them share that content with editorial so that editorial gets convinced that they should feature you. I mean with the Apple developer relations person. So as a developer, you would have a developer relations point of contact within Apple appointed to you. Cool. I'll circle back to that question right after this. Cool. So gearing up for the marketing launch, a few things that you can do. I can't say this enough. Developer relations is the person to work with. And the takeaway here is it's because they are the only people who have a direct line to editorial, and editorial relies on them to feature you. So there's no other way around it. Of course, I guess there's one way around it, which I'll cover, but that's a little bit of a black box. I personally don't really know how well that works. And that is this link that Apple promotes. And this is a public link that they promote. And they say that you should drop a note to them at least 6 weeks in advance of whenever you're planning to make a release. And this link is sort of valid all through the year, right? This is not just about the iOS launch, but anytime you're making a big update, making a big release, something that you want to get featured in, you want to bring it to Apple's attention, Apple says that you should drop your story on this link at least 6 weeks in advance. In my personal experience, this is a little bit of a black box because you don't really know what happens, although I have heard that editorial pays a lot of attention here. But I'm sure it's a lot of noise, and I'm sure they get a lot of input here. So I definitely recommend the developer relations route, the way to go for that. Cool. Now that you at this point you probably have your build, you're ready to release. You have been speaking to your developer relations person a lot. I just have a few things to share for the actual release. Before I end, one is, like Moy said, updating screenshots. Definitely must do, especially if your new release or your new iOS, when you update the app, it's going to change the look and feel. Definitely update the screenshots. Editorial does care about that when they are featuring an app, right? So make sure that you're up to date. And if there's anything new that you want to bring out, definitely use the screenshots. It's very effective, especially in conversions and getting those views to installs up. Updating what's new, a little bit of a no-brainer, but definitely use that as well. And the reason being, we've seen users themselves relying on the what's new a lot to figure out if this is or what new feature is this app supporting. Because remember that consumers themselves are very excited that the new iOS version has come out. So if they see you being featured, they definitely want to, first see what new feature you're supporting, so that they can try that feature out at least. So definitely update the what's new. One tip here I have though is we've talked about being day 0 ready, which would mean that you have probably submitted your app before the new iOS version has gone out. Make sure not to mention the name of the new iOS version. So for instance, don't say, hey, the app is now ready for iOS 13. Apple will reject your app. The reason being you can't mention a version of iOS that Apple itself hasn't released publicly. It has happened to us. And an extension of that is come October, if you are supporting new devices as well, don't mention the name of the hardware before it's actually gone out by Apple. Your app will not be approved. So that's just a little tip based on experience. One thing that we learned actually in our latest release was there are a ton of roundup blogs that are happening, and a lot of journalists are just looking for, tech blogs are just looking for new developers who are supporting the new versions of iOS, and this is an exercise that's constantly happening come September. So definitely keep an eye out on that. I talked about a few like 9 to 5 Mac and iMore and CNET that featured us in iOS 13, and that happened because we did cold outreach again to journalists that have written about iOS in the past. They will probably do another roundup blog talking about the apps that are supporting the new iOS versions. So definitely worth reaching out to them for some free coverage. And my final thought that I will leave you with is that submit early for sure. This is, like I said, day zero ready is critical. So submit early and get approved. And you need to be ready for release before iOS goes out. Keep in mind that there are a lot of people who will be submitting updates at this point. So the review cycle might be a lot longer than 24 hours. So submit early, get approved. There could be anything that Apple flags at this stage. Like I said, there was at one point they flagged our what's new, which was highly unexpected for us. But yeah, just get approved and be ready so that you're ready to hit the button as soon as iOS goes out. I think that was all that I had to share. I'd be happy to take any questions if you have for me now.